Why, hello everyone, Sean here, and I just wanted to sit down and talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake with the DLC that came out not too long ago, which is Intergrade. And I wanted to just sit down and talk about my thoughts about it and, discuss with you guys, for those who have played it, with all the theories and theory crafting, and just have a little fun little discussion of what's to come for the future, especially when it comes to the storyline of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, for those who have not quite gotten their hands on, DLC because it's only exclusive for PlayStation 5, unfortunately, I will provide my non-spoiler reviews, and then we'll go into the spoiler portion of things with all the theories and stuff like that. But firstly, I think the DLC is great. It really provides what's to come for the future of this game, essentially, for Part 2 and beyond. I think having Sonnen as sort of like that excuse for, showing off the team synergy stuff is really cool. I think Sonnen himself was fine. I think he's like pretty much vanilla versus Yuffie being like the chocolate or anything that goes with vanilla. You know what I mean? So the two kind of like became good partners and such, as not only for the story, for the sake of the story, but for the sake of the gameplay as well, and the team mechanics that were present in this DLC was pretty fun to use. Especially once you sort of master when to use it, when to take it off, when to really go ham on the enemy to get the most damage out of the situation. And I think that whole sort of switching and stuff like that, it does really add a little more depth to what's already there for the whole like ATB mechanic and all that stuff. So I think it's really neat of how this was all incorporated. So it makes me really feel excited for what they have in store for the team mechanics for the rest of the crew members or the team members for Part 2 and beyond that. I really can't wait to see what they'll deal with it. They'll definitely. I think this felt like a glorified demo overall, with some sprinkles in there just to keep it feel like it's a game. You know what I mean? So you'll have like the story, you have the sort of the side missions and such to keep you a little distracted, and of course the little extras to keep you occupied, to give you that sort of completionist mentality. So you have some of the boss fights to work on. You have these little collecting segments, right? So including the material, of course, and all the little treasures, and you even have I think it's called the Happy Turtle to keep you busy to collect those posters and such. That those are sort of the elements that are added in there for the sake of making it feel like it's a game. But to me, after thinking about it, it really kind of is like a glorified demo for what's to come for Part 2, especially with the whole team synergy thing that you do have going on. With all the possibilities, up in the air. So I think that's great. I think it turned out great. The only unfortunate thing or gripe I do have with it is just the fact that they only have it exclusive for PlayStation 5. But I think, just being devil's advocate or playing devil's advocate in a way, I think this is just their way of saying this is what the game is going to be. It's a PlayStation 5 game now, and this is what is established and how the game is going to look, because the game looks absolutely fantastic now with the PlayStation 5 upgrade, especially if you go back onto the regular 7 Remake with Cloud and the rest of the crew. If you just kind of do the chapter selection and just check out just the scenery, it looks drastically better. Even the doors now have texture to them and detail to them. And if you check out Aerith's place with all the flowers, amazing. It's just literally night and day. It's absolutely amazing of how much of an upgrade you can get just getting the PlayStation 5. But it's just unfortunate that right now it's not the easiest thing to do. Even though back in back a few years ago, you can just wait a little bit and then you can buy yourself a PlayStation or the newest and latest Nintendo console. But not this time for right now, just because of the pandemic sort of nature of people staying indoors and doing things on the side and stuff like that, including setting up bots to buy the PlayStations. But that's a whole nother discussion. And the point is that a lot of people I'm assuming do have the case of FOMO, and that's really unfortunate for those who have not been able to get their hands on a PlayStation just yet. It's definitely is difficult. I do understand. So, I'm definitely I can only say I'm sorry that you guys have not been able to get your PlayStation 5s in your hands. I definitely understand how difficult it can be, because it applies to a lot of things nowadays, including graphics cards and Pokemon cards as well, funny enough. Anywho, back onto the subject here as I digress. So it does make me look forward to everything that's been presented from Intergrade. The whole team synergy thing, just lore dumps and all that stuff. And speaking of lore, I do want to bring up that whole theory crafting part of the segment soon. So to wrap things up, I think the gameplay side of things was good. I think it's fair. The boss fights were fun enough with the balance of challenge and just getting through the story. It relatively is short. It is $20, so you're just gonna have to know what you're expecting. Just know what you're paying for, but it's still a quality sort of little sprinkle in there for your thirst of 7 Remake. And again, it just felt like a glorified big demo at $20 that allows you to show how Yuffie's gonna play. Not only that, but how team synergy is going to come in and play as well with the rest of the crew. I think because it really nails what is it really supposed to be doing. I think it's definitely a solid like 9.5 out of 10, or even a 10 out of 10 really, because it's just it did what it did, and it was fun. It's $20, and while the length is pretty relatively short, but you do get what you're expecting out of it, and I think it does a good job doing so. It looks good while doing so, and it's fun while doing so. So I think really either between a 9.5 or 10 out of 10 really is pretty justified there. Unless you're really super nitpicky about the story, then that's I can't really speak on it. People who are like that, but I do understand because it's such a story-driven thing that's been established for many years at this point. All in all, though, I think it's still definitely worth checking out if you do have a PlayStation 5 and you're thinking about trying to get the Intergrade DLC right now. Still, for some reason, I think you should definitely do it. Along with that, the upgrade for the PlayStation 5, experience when it comes to 7 Remake, the main game, I think it's worth checking out as well. That itself is pretty much like maybe worth a second playthrough just to look through everything, cutscenes and all. So I think that itself is a resurgence of sorts, like a mini resurgence for 7 Remake, even though 7 Remake already has established and accomplished so much within the sort of the gaming world. So now we are going into the spoiler portion of things, aka the theory crafting time. So first off, I do want to get this out of the way. Poor Sonnen. I just had a feeling he was gonna go. I think the way he went out was pretty appropriate. It wasn't overly dramatic or anything like that. It was pretty appropriate for his character, what he went through, and his relationship with Yuffie. I think it was kind of appropriate for the most part. Maybe a little cheesy, maybe for some people, but I think it's just it has enough cheese to be appropriate while still I guess being entertaining in that sense. So but back to Sonnen, I had a feeling he was going to go. I really don't know how they would have been able to pull it off, having him as part of the main crew, you know what I mean? So I'm not opposed to having him on the team if he was going to be alive somehow, or just have him separate from Yuffie for a while, they split up and try to hide or something like that after their mission was, I don't know, either a success or a failure, depending on how you look at it. I think that could have been another way to do it, but I'm not, I just thought, hey, the way he went was, it made sense to me, but it still sucked for him to go like that. You know what I mean? thanks to Nero. And speaking of Nero, I think the whole thing with Weiss and Nero is a little confusing to me. Like it's, I think something that I do want to look into a little more is, Weiss really just this virtual avatar of Nero's brother, or is that even really Nero's brother at all? It's just like a bro kind of thing, So. Nero is definitely real. He's the real one, right? I guess. So makes me wonder of where Nero is going to be within part 2, or what role he's going to play for the future of the story. It's kind of interesting to see how the other games are going to be incorporated into this Final Fantasy story. Makes me wonder if everything else relating to Final Fantasy VII will kind of come into play as well. Dirge of Cerberus already a thing, of course. It's part of the storyline. So now, what else could there be, right? I'm not too familiar with the whole Final Fantasy VII lineup. I'm not like a huge hardcore fan of any like that. I just haven't been playing the game ever since it came out, and I grew to love Final Fantasy VII. I became a newly fan, I guess you can say. So and it does get me thinking about these stories and theories and such, because I do like my lore for especially a lot of games anyway. So this is all interesting to me either way. So it ended on a rather somber note with Sonnen gone and Yuffie is alone. She's just out there by herself essentially with that chocobo. But meanwhile, Cloud and his crew are just walking out away from Midgar and carrying out their sort of mission, right? So with some of the theories already been established or sort of been talked about from last year or whatever. So I think what's going on, just to kind of like kind of lay out the foundation, is that there's a lot of timelines going on here. This is this is definitely not the Final Fantasy VII that you know and love. This is an alternate sort of timeline for the 7 story. With Cloud and everyone else being technically different. It's not the same Cloud, it's not the same Barret, it's not the same, Tifa, Aerith, you name it. Even Yuffie, of course, it's not the same Yuffie, because this is supposed to be an alternate universe. And what the Phantoms are pretty much heralds from the original Final Fantasy VII timeline, and they're there to say this is not how it's supposed to happen. This is not how it's supposed to happen. This is not how it's supposed to happen. So essentially, they represent the fans of the old 7 in a way. That's how a handful of people at this point have been referring to them as, which I think is hilarious, but it kind of makes sense in a way. So what what is happening here is that 7 Remake is a completely separate timeline. Meanwhile, original 7 is its own separate timeline as well. Meanwhile, there's that whole thing with Zack. Zack is supposed to be dead from previous games, whatever, like Crisis Core or whatever it's called. That timeline I believe is supposed to be the same with the 7 Remake the old 7 timeline, right? And there was that part when you see Zack, Cloud, and Aerith sort of all walking across each other. Of course, with Zack, I believe he was kind of like a spirit or ghost or something like that. And I think what's happening here is that Zack and Cloud and and everyone else are all on separate timelines. So Zack is up here, Cloud and everyone else is right here, and they happen to sort of just like come through that same sort of happening. So that's why it's almost like taking 2 animation cells and then putting them together, and you have like this weird cross thing going on. And essentially, this is what is happening here. It's like you have Zack just walking by, you have Cloud and everyone else walking by in the opposite direction. And so, while it is technically sort of that same place, quote unquote, the people aren't so much. So that's why you have this like weird overlay thing happening to pretty much indicate that you have these two timelines going around at the same time. It's a little confusing. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but that's essentially what is happening, or I think at least what's happening here, because it's not, has not been fully established, because we're still waiting on part 2 to sort of lay out more stuff for the lore, and we'll probably have more questions even then, even if by then. But I think that's what's essentially happening. So there was that whole scene with after all the extras you've seen with Cloud and the crew, Barrett, trying to he essentially hitchhiked that truck for everyone, and they were going to the next town, which I'm not too familiar with, but I'm sure the old fans are familiar with. Anyway, so we had all that scene, and then the scene with Zach did happen. He was right in front of the church where Aerith was, where you first met Aerith, with the flowers and everything. And so we have to remember that this isn't the same exact place, even though it's the church, it's the and everything. It's not the same exact church, not the same exact thing, because remember it's a separate timeline. So, or or a different dimension even, or parallel dimension. So Zach is there. He's trying to sort of come up with something to say after being away for so long from Aerith, because Aerith and Zach, at least in this timeline, probably have some sort of romantic sort of relationship or link or something going on between the two. So Zach is just trying to come up with something to essentially say hi in a way. But he just went fuck it, I'm just gonna go in and talk to her. So after coming in, he finds just people, not Aerith, just people trying to take refuge of what appeared to be the plate dropping or whatever happened, all the hoopla and whatever event that took place. They're all taking refuge because of that. And you see the children crying, and not to mention the flowers that Aerith had tried to take care of were withering. So it's kind of like a subtext or message of sorts that something tragic happened, right? And supposedly, in this timeline anyway, Aerith is already dead. Whether it was thanks to Sephiroth or whatever it was, Aerith is dead in this timeline. So that's essentially sort of it for Zach's sort of scene. So it really paints a picture of what is going to happen, or what possibly could happen for the rest of the story for Final Fantasy VII. And essentially, I think after taking a look at a bunch or a good number of lore videos or theories, including of course Maximilian, because he's a huge fan, of course, of the series. I couldn't help but agree of what is going to happen, from his perspective, what is going to happen with the future of this storyline. So I believe with these two timelines at hand, we, at this point, it's likely that these are two timelines that we're going to be focused on, right? If that's true, even, right, with the two timeline thing. I mean, it could be all in the same timeline, and something weird's happening because of some deviancy. Some deviance is taking place somewhere else, and this whole thing could be a red herring. You never know. But anyway, let's just go with the two timeline theory. And so eventually, I think Zack and Cloud from the two timelines are gonna somehow come together and face Sephiroth together. I guess in a poetic way, because Zack was dead and Cloud was alone, or not alone in the way, but you know what I mean. Like it wasn't like it should have been Zack and Cloud facing Sephiroth together to save the world essentially. So that's going to happen eventually, right? Or there's always a thing where Zack is a boss, and I think he's going to be essentially an important NPC for the most part. I think Zack, just because Zack and Cloud might have some other similarities with their fighting style. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with Zack's fighting style. But, having these two in the crew, I don't know how it would fare with the gameplay of things. So I don't know if Zack is going to be even going to be possibly a brand new character for the crew. And we don't even know how him joining the crew will make sense with the story and all that stuff. I don't know, but that's just sort of the possibilities, I guess, with what could happen in the future. But I think the end result, I can agree that Zack and Cloud are going to come together eventually on and they're all on the same page essentially and they're going to go kick Sephiroth's ass essentially. So that is going to be what is happening. Is just it's an alternate take or an alternate universe, and then you have the original universe, and they're gonna come together, and stuff is gonna happen essentially. Now, first I thought Aerith and Remake and Aerith in the original timeline are going to meet together too, but now with this in play, maybe not so much anymore. The Aerith from the original timeline is already dead. So that's probably not going to happen. Maybe we'll see some sort of dark Aerith or a zombie Aerith or a undead Aerith of sorts, a phantom Aerith, I don't know. Meeting up with Cloud and the rest of our heroes, wherever they may be at the time, and that could be a boss fight of sorts, possibly. Or something else completely different could happen, of course. That's always a possibility. With timelines and everything, you can just literally screw up some things and really cause some ripples in a pond, by throwing that big rock in there, and those ripples are going to have people talking, right? Now, back onto the future of the gameplay side of things, I think this is going to represent and more of an open worldish sort of aspect to for Final Fantasy VII Remake, as opposed to a much more linear experience that we got from the main game for part 1 essentially. So part 2 I think will be a lot more free, and I think it'll feel a lot more sort of a sandboxy type of thing. You can do do a couple more things, just a bit more than what you can with part 1. So I think that'll be a pretty fun thing. Maybe I don't know if they'll let you have a car or airship or something like that, or something brand new. I don't know. Maybe a big ass chocobar or something. I don't know. It could be anything, I guess, really, that as long as it has a set of wheels, and it'll take you from point A to point B and back and forth, and B to A, back and forth, and that will essentially be how part 2 will go. It'll probably be an emphasis on the open world aspect of part 2, because that's what essentially happens in the original 7 when it comes to disc 2. It becomes much more open, and you can do whatever you want in a way. Now, I believe original 7, if you just play really for the story, it's relatively a short game, I think. I could be wrong on that one, but depending on how much of a completionist you are, that could take a lot longer. So if you want to take the knights, you want to get the Knights of the Round Table or whatever. If you want to get all the chocobo stuff done and blah blah blah, then that'll take a lot longer and such. So that's probably just me digressing in a way. But anyway, so I think here though, when it comes to how long the game will be, I think that game itself will probably have not only the original elements thrown in there, but we'll probably see some more story, a little more filler and stuff like that to fill in time to make part 2 feel like a full game. Because otherwise, if you just go with the original stuff, it'll probably feel a lot shorter, maybe. I think at the end of the day, crazy stuff is going to happen, man. You never know what's going to come up in 7 Remake, because this is an alternate take. We really don't even know how much Part 2 will stay on track with the original 7 Disc 2 or Part 2, essentially. So, we could probably see more characters along the way joining the party. Who knows if, Vincent or Sid or anyone else can join after Yuffie. Because, of course, that's when Yuffie joins the crew somehow in some way. From what I can understand. And that will be like the time when you are introduced to the team mechanics, essentially. I think also the tutorial for the team mechanics will probably be thrown in there somewhere, either in the beginning or maybe early on when you have like some sort of fight. And one, Max, of course, represented this theory as supposedly for how the game is going to begin. And it's a flashback scene with Cloud and the rest of the soldiers, including Sephiroth, of course, all in a transport of sorts, about to do their mission. And that's where you get to find out how the team synergy mechanics work, or you're at least reminded of these mechanics, and maybe how to use them and when to use them and such, with the tips given out during that segment. So I think that's something I can agree on as well. Maybe we'll probably just see just a flashback and won't be necessarily a tutorial, but we'll definitely see some backstory on the whole soldier thing and Mako and all that jazz that 7 original had, and then they'll throw in the remake sprinkles to make things a little different, have more of that deviancy for the sake of making things different. But anyway, that's all the rambling I can do without sort of looping around to the same thing. That's all I got for this video. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to comment about what you think of Intergrade and what you think is going to happen for the story, essentially, for 7 Remake. And, if you have your own theories, I would love to check them out, because I love to just listen to, people's theories and what people think might happen for games like this. Such a big game with a big story, and this game is going to be going to be on people's minds for a pretty good while. I think this whole thing will be done. I don't know, maybe like 5 to 7 years or something like that. And there is going to be quite a bit of waiting in between. So plus some DLC sprinkled in there just to kind of keep our thirst quenched. Meanwhile. But anyway, that's my review / theory talk for 7 Remake, coming from Intergrade, of course. I had a lot of fun with it. And no, I've not done the secret boss fight. I don't really care about that one. I rather just watch people try to do that, because I know someone was struggling for an hour when someone else on YouTube did it in like 53 seconds. Anyway, on that note, we can end the video. Thank you so much. This has been my review for Intergrade, and of course the theory talk. As always, of course, I'm gonna say it one more time. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Sean out.